I could read a passage. There's a long passage I'd love to read, but I think, so I can allow you time for questions, I'm going to read a shorter passage. And this is when Bud is out on the boat. I'm going to give you Bud, because I want to take you out on the boat. It's pretty amazing to be on the boat. If you get seasick, be sure and wear a patch. Because once they stop and that diesel fumes start coming up, yes. But these guys are hardy. And the story takes place in one day. And as an author, I'll tell you, I don't think I'll do a flashback for a very long time, because this book has a lot of flashbacks in it. It's how I told the story. But I worked very, very hard to set up a system so you would not ever get lost. And there's, in each chapter, the date, the time, and then the location. So you would know point of view, and you would know location, and not get lost. So here we are on September 21st, 2008. By the way, why is that an important date for McClellanville? September 21st. Hurricane Hugo hit, and it was dead center in McClellanville. This is on board Miss Carolina. And Bud had woken up, and he had to rush out, and his striker didn't show up, so he went out alone because he wants to make his day. The engine rumbled beneath him as Bud maneuvered the Miss Carolina away from the dock. He looked back. Under the dull light over the warehouse, he saw old Tom step outside and wave. Bud lifted his hand. The Miss Carolina was the last of the shrimp boats to leave McClellanville that morning, but she was on her way at last. He knew the murky water of the creek as well as he knew the narrow stairwell of his home. Overhead, a guard of gulls flew in sloppy formation around the Miss Carolina like tugboats. He motored through Jeremy Creek. Lights from houses shone like stars through the fog. He crossed the intercoastal waterway and moved into Five Fathom Creek in the dim light, past barrier islands with their maze of winding creeks and lush acres of marshes. Then, suddenly, the vista opened, and in a breath he was on the Atlantic. The pitch of the engine rose, and the diesel fumes filled his nostrils as he throttled up. The wheel vibrated with the power, and the water churned into whitecaps and froth in the wake. Above, the gulls began their raucous screaming. At long last, Bud released the ear-to-ear grin he'd held in check throughout the early morning hours. This was the moment he lived for. This was what he rose early each morning in search of. Freedom! Out here, all the powers with his house, all the worries about money owed, the fights with his wife, the struggles with Lee, his father, PD, all that was behind him on shore. All that lay ahead was the majesty of a dawn breaking across a horizon that went on forever. Out here, he was his own man. Bud wasn't looking back. He was rushing forward, standing wide-legged with his chin up and his hands firmly clasped on the wheel. Bud took a long, deep breath, then laughed out loud, feeling the wind flow over his skin like water. Thank you. That gives you an idea, truly, of what it feels like to go out on those boats. I just wanted to close with the last hurdle that shrimpers are facing today. I mean, how could I not close with what's going on in the Gulf right now? I think my heart's breaking, as I know yours are too. It's a tragedy that leaves me befuddled. When I look at the news, you know, day 53s of today, and you just look and you just think, how can this be? That this much oil is still spewing out there. How can it be? And I thought it was timely in a very sad way, going back to that Joseph Campbell thing about being a shaman. It's kind of freaky a little bit for me, but also I'm very glad this book is out now in paperback. Because when you hear in the news how shrimpers are out of work, and fishermen are out of work, and so many people will be out of work along the coastline, it doesn't have a personal story attached to it. And I thought, I'm really glad this story's out here, because now you know about the lives and the heritage and the culture of all the shrimpers. And when you hear that there are these men who are used to working 18 hours days, are now sitting on their hands with nothing to do. And I don't know what's going to happen to them. This is truly the death knell of the shrimping industry along the southeast, the Gulf. It will be in the Gulf. Let me just go two steps back. It's in the Gulf, but it will be touching, and there's evidence it's in the Gulf Stream, which is very frightening because the Gulf Stream is the highway 50, 60 miles out there. So it's not on shore, it's 50, 60 miles out there. But that's why everyone's worried about what the hurricane season could do and bring that ashore. Shrimp are bottom feeders, so they're out for the count. The roe, right now the shrimpers are catching the white shrimp, and the roe then grows and goes into the marshes for the next generation. And if the marshes are destroyed, that's future generations. This is spawning season for most of our favorite fish, and that Gulf is the #1 fishing area for fished in the United States. And all the eggs that are fertile were floating on top of the water, and so that's generations right there. I'm really worried about my turtles. When a sea turtle hatches, and they begin hatching in July along the Atlantic coast, once it's in the Gulf, that little hatchling has 3 days, it's by instinct, that's 180, 200 million years old, to get to the water, swim for about 3 days, till it makes it to the Gulf. And the current carries it to the huge sargassum floats in the Gulf, where they hide and live until they get, we don't know how many years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, about the size of a dinner plate where they can move on. So imagine all those little hatchlings in the Gulf. I'm really concerned if that oil slick hits the sargassum floats. So I think it's important for all of us to sort of have a feeling that this is not just happening to Louisiana. South Carolina is a pivotal state. We're a coastal state. So anything we can do, any donations to be made, I don't have any answers. I think all of us are looking for how we can help. But I do feel that it's important for us to pay attention. And my heroine, my Carolina in this novel, is a Greenville girl. And if you've read the book, you know that wonderful scene where about her daddy and her mama not being real sure about her going down to McClellanville. But she's from Greenville, and she wants to be a shrimper's wife. In other words, we're all in this together. We really are. And I just know that if you love my books, then you know, and I know you love wildlife and landscape, and this is a very precious part of our culture and our heritage. And I thank you for reading my books. I'll continue to write them. The next book is about butterflies, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to open up for questions. Dolphins. In August, I jump into the Atlantic and I start rehabilitating dolphins, which I'm very excited about. But if you've seen the Cove, you know fur dolphins are in trouble too. And if you haven't seen The Cove, please do. It's the Oscar-winning film on the slaughter of dolphins in Japan. Let me end on a happy note. This book ends with hope, because I really do believe that ultimately we will prevail. The shrimpers along the southeast coast may have to adjust their big boat trawlers to smaller boats to create niche markets, but there will always be a demand for wild American shrimp, especially if all of us, when you go to the restaurants and grocery stores, especially along the coast, ask the waitress, "Excuse me, is this local shrimp? Is this wild American shrimp?" And if they say, "I'm not sure," then chances are it's not. But do ask for and demand local wild American shrimp, because it will keep our boys out of, our saltwater cowboys out on the water. And I have great faith in America that we will prevail. Thank you so much.